Hi, faculty. I just wanted to take a moment to talk a little bit about some of Herman and Wallace's plan in anticipation of our meeting on Friday. So you'll have a chance to maybe formulate some questions for me and Sam prior to when we all get together. We are shooting for a happy hour time for this meeting, 5 p.m. on the West Coast. So if you would like to join with a beer or a wine or a personal watermelon, as I prefer, please feel free to do so. And I just wanted to take a moment also to thank everybody for being so patient and understanding while Herman and Wallace and our admin team weather this absolutely unprecedented time. I had sent an email a few weeks ago about how we had canceled, at that point, about 75 events, and we're dealing with about 2,000 canceled registrations. We're now up into the 80s. And so it's just been staggering the amount of customer service work that goes into taking care of all of these people who are panicking and trying to figure out what's going on. So we are not probably as good at getting back to you with calls and emails as we usually are. And I do appreciate not only your understanding and your patience, but the support and kind messages that we've received. Lord knows my team needs it. I probably do too. And so thank you so much for demonstrating such a sense of community on the faculty. So just to chat, oh, I won't ever clap my hands again. That shakes my whole screen. Just to chat a bit about what our plan is going forward. As you've received in an email, we are looking to hybridize the entire pelvic floor series, PF1, 2A, 2B, and Capstone. And what I mean by hybridize is that we are working with Holly and Jessica, our curriculum developers, to look at what content can be pulled out of an in-person meeting, the content that's very didactic, talky, maybe very introductory, and put into pre-recorded lectures that participants would watch prior to attending an in-person course. So what that'll look like for a participant registering for a PF series course in the future would be that they sign up, and then maybe about a week, maybe a little bit more before the course, they're going to get some very polished, we've hired a videographer, pre-recorded lectures of about 8 hours of content that would otherwise have been presented in person, and is usually the content that is the most like instructor is reading the slides to me. By pulling that out, we'll be able to take all of those courses down to 2 days, and I think really maximize our in-person time for labs, for questions, for that human component, and less so the sitting there diligently taking notes while somebody reads slides to you. So why are we doing this? Well, first and foremost, it was born something out of necessity due to COVID. As site hosts were working with us to try and reschedule postponed courses, the idea of closing down for a full 3 days, including the Friday day in the clinic after reopening, was really a deal breaker for a ton of them. But in a bigger picture way, this is something we've wanted to do for a long time. Every time I would have a strategic managers meeting on our admin team, we would talk about what is the biggest thing standing in our way of offering more courses. And it's because there are just not that many site hosts who can give up all day Friday, Saturday, Sunday for 40 people. It's a production. And so we're always limited in our number of site hosts, particularly for the PF series. And we hope that by doing this, our expectation is that we'll be able to host a lot more courses, leaner, meaner, smaller, and bringing it down to 2 days may mean that both when we're returning to business post-COVID and beyond, we're talking about maybe having one instructor teach for 2 days for a 20-person group or a 24-person group, or maybe it's 2 instructors teaching 40 participants for 2 days. But it basically will open up a ton more site hosts for us, which will allow us to host courses more often, more locations, and that should mean that for our faculty, the opportunity to teach more. And maybe what that looks like for you, rather than say my teaching schedule in 2019 was I taught 6 times, I flew coast to coast. I usually had to take Thursday off of work if I was flying from Portland to New York. And maybe also a big chunk of Monday too. So I was out of the clinic, childcare for all of those, 4.5 days, maybe 5 days, depending on flight schedule. That's a production, and it's taxing for the faculty as well, and it's taxing for participants, right? So what it may look like in 2020, if we get back to business sometime soon in 2020 and into 2021, is your teaching schedule looks a lot more like I taught 8 or 9 times, sometimes by myself to smaller groups at locations that were a drive or a short regional flight. And I could leave Friday late afternoon, maybe fly out Monday morning, maybe get out Sunday evening, but it was 2 days of time for participants, for faculty, and everyone showing up having already had 8 hours of introductory, very helpful content, ready to ask questions, and then dive into labs and the more interactive aspects. So I think it's going to ultimately make this company leaner and meaner and better able to schedule more courses, more places, with all of you teaching probably more often, but in a way that's less taxing on you and your clinic and your family and also the environment. Because having more hosts able to host locally may mean we can cut down on every time we schedule something, we're looking at somebody flying from California to Philadelphia, etc. So that is our plan, and it was brought on out of the necessity of COVID, but it's something we've actually wanted to do for a long time. I think it's the more modern and smart way to run these courses. As I've joked to, I think everyone at this point, I think we're all as a nation learning how many meetings could have been an email, and we're learning what Con Ed doesn't need to happen in a room that everyone flew to. So that is our plan right now. What that currently looks like and what we're currently working on is Holly and Jess are hard at work at the PF1 pre-recorded lectures. They have come up with an outline and they will be filming those shortly. We've hired a professional videographer to edit them so they look very polished. We also have the team that developed the capstone course, Nari, Jen, and Allison, working on that course. Next up will be 2A and then 2B. So we're very much looking forward to that. And during this time, while we work on these pre-records, since we already have the outline of what PF1 is going to look like, and it now sort of has this part 1 and part 2, part 1 being the 8-ish hours of didactic content that's ultimately going to be offered as a pre-recorded lecture, and then a part 2 where we meet in person. We're also looking at taking that 8 hours of didactic content and offering that via Zoom to the folks, particularly the ones whose courses have been canceled and postponed and they're just desperate to get started. So I'm looping in some instructors to start teaching Zoom meetings of that 8 hours of didactic content, then padded for Q&A and more interactive stuff, because they will be getting a live, interactive and in-person, well, on Zoom instructor teaching those. If you're interested into hopping into the mix of teaching on Zoom, we hope to just continue offering these. No one knows when we're going back to business as usual, if we ever do. So we'll be rolling out those Zoom meetings, and then from there, as we perhaps dip a toe into, can we meet in person in small groups in states where there are not a lot of cases, observing social distancing and whatever the recommendations are of local governments, it might look like come July, August, we start looking at, can we have one instructor teaching to 20 people, sitting at a distance, masked up? Of course, all of that is very much a question mark. What we do know now is some of the just purely didactic content we can offer remotely and safely while we all stay home. So that is where we are right now. And that will obviously impact what this series looks like going forward and forever, and impact all of you. So Sam and I are, and Holly and Jess are happy to and eager to answer all of your questions about this. So I invite you to join us on Friday with a beer or a wine or a personal watermelon, if that is your preference. I might do both. And we can try and address some of your questions. If you'd like to email us some of your questions beforehand, we're happy to field them, but we are doing an Reddit style AMA, which means ask me anything. You can ask us anything, probably best if it's related to the Institute, but if you would like to know other things about us, we're happy to talk about that too. And I hope you guys look forward to it and find it fun. I think we all really need community right now. And certainly this faculty represents one of the most tightly knit communities that we have. So looking forward to seeing you Friday and talk to you then. Bye.